My daughter-in-law took out a $620,000 loan in my name to renovate the house furniture. The next day, I showed up with a lawyer and an eviction notice. She went pale. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The phone rang at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I remember the time because I was sitting at my kitchen table, still in my bathrobe, stirring honey into my morning tea when the shrill sound cut through the peaceful silence of my house. Mrs. Mildred Thompson? The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Mildred. This is Jennifer Martinez from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding your home equity loan. Your first payment of $4,200 is now 30 days overdue. The spoon in my hand stopped moving. I set it down carefully, my heart beginning to race in that peculiar way it does when something is terribly wrong, but your mind hasn't caught up yet. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. I don't have a home equity loan. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Mrs. Thompson, our records show you signed for a $620,000 home equity line of credit on March 15th. The funds were fully disbursed to Morrison Home Renovations on March 18th. The words hit me like ice water. $620,000. Morrison Home Renovations, March 15th, the day I had been at my doctor's appointment for my annual checkup, the day Selene had insisted on staying home to organize some paperwork for me. That's impossible, I whispered. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place in my mind like a horrible puzzle. Ma'am, I have your signature right here on the documents. Would you like me to email you copies? I gave her my email address with trembling fingers. The moment I hung up, I rushed to my computer. The documents arrived within minutes, and there it was, my signature, perfect, identical to how I'd been signing my name for 65 years. But I had never seen these papers before in my life. My hands shook as I scrolled through page after page. Loan agreements, renovation contracts, all bearing my forged signature. All dated for days when Selene had convenient reasons for me to be out of the house. The front door opened, and I heard Selene's voice calling out cheerfully, "Morning, Mom. David's already at work, but I brought you those blueberry muffins from the bakery you love." Mom. She'd been calling me that for 3 years now, ever since my husband Harold passed away. I'd been so touched by it then, so grateful that my daughter-in-law wanted to include me, to make me feel like family. Now the word made my stomach turn. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen on unsteady legs. Selene was already bustling around, putting the muffins on a plate, starting a fresh pot of coffee. She looked so normal, so caring. Her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing one of those expensive workout outfits that somehow cost more than my grocery budget for a month. "You okay, Mom? You look pale." I stared at her, really looked at her. The woman who had wormed her way into my life after Harold's death, who had convinced David that I needed looking after, who had slowly, systematically, taken over managing my bills, my appointments, my life, who had just stolen over $500,000 from me. "Selene," I said quietly, "we need to talk." Something flickered in her eyes, just for a second, like a mask slipping. "Of course. What about?" "About the phone call I just received from First National Bank." The coffee pot slipped from her hands. It shattered on the kitchen floor, sending glass and hot coffee everywhere. But I barely noticed. I was watching her face, watching the color drain from her cheeks, watching her mouth open and close like a fish gasping for air. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, but her voice had lost all its warmth. $620,000, Selene. You forged my signature and took out a loan for $620,000 in my name." She started to cry then, perfect tears sliding down her perfect cheeks. "Mom, please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I was trying to help. The house needed so much work, and you thought you'd steal from me." The tears stopped as abruptly as they'd started. When she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating. Steal is such an ugly word, Mom. I prefer to think of it as investing in the family. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through the past 3 years like a film reel I'd watched 1,000 times but never really seen. Selene had entered our lives like a breath of fresh air. David brought her home for Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago, his face glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen since he was a child. She was beautiful, charming, and she hung on his every word like he was the most fascinating man alive. "She's perfect," Harold had whispered to me in the kitchen while we carved the turkey. Finally, someone good enough for our boy. If only we had known. After Harold's funeral, when I could barely function through my grief, Selene had stepped in like an angel of mercy. She organized the wake, handled the endless paperwork, coordinated with the funeral home. I was so lost in my sorrow that I barely noticed how efficiently she took over. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," she'd said, rubbing my shoulders as I sat at this very kitchen table, surrounded by sympathy cards and insurance forms. "I'll take care of everything. You just focus on healing." She'd been so convincing, so caring. When she offered to help manage my bills, I'd felt nothing but gratitude. When she suggested I shouldn't be handling financial decisions while grieving, it seemed reasonable. When she started keeping my important documents organized in her home office, I thought it was thoughtful. I was a fool. The next morning, David arrived before his usual work hours. I heard his key in the lock, heard Selene's urgent whispers in the hallway. When they entered the kitchen, David's face was set in hard lines I'd rarely seen. "Mom, we need to discuss this situation rationally." "Rationally?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Your wife committed fraud, David. She forged my signature and stole over $500,000 from me." "That's enough." His voice was sharp, angry. "Selene explained everything to me. She was trying to help you. This house was falling apart and you were too proud to accept help." I stared at my son. My only child. The boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out. The man I'd put through college working double shifts at the hospital. The son who was now defending the woman who'd stolen from his own mother. The house was not falling apart, David. "The roof leaked," Selene interjected, her voice soft and reasonable. "The kitchen cabinets were outdated. The whole place needed updating. I was trying to protect your investment, Mom. Property values in this neighborhood." "Don't call me Mom," I snapped. "You lost that right when you forged my name." David moved protectively closer to his wife. "She's family. Mother. And families help each other. Maybe if you hadn't been so stubborn about accepting help, she wouldn't have had to..." "Had to what? Commit a felony?" The room fell silent. Selene's eyes filled with tears again. But this time I could see the calculation behind them. She was working David like a master puppeteer. "I never meant for you to find out this way," she whispered. "I was going to surprise you. Show you how beautiful the house could be. I thought you'd be happy." "Happy?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Happy that you stole from me? Happy that you've probably destroyed my credit? Happy that you've put me in debt for the rest of my life?" "We'll figure it out," David said firmly. Selene made a mistake, but her heart was in the right place. We're family. We work through things. No, David, we don't work through fraud. This isn't a family disagreement. This is a crime. Something shifted in the room then. David's expression hardened further, and Selene's tears dried up completely. "If you pursue this legally," David said slowly, "you'll be destroying your own family. Is that really what you want? To be the bitter old woman who sent her own daughter-in-law to prison?" The words hit me like a physical blow. My own son was threatening me, manipulating me the same way his wife had been doing for years. "And what about my grandchildren?" Selene added quietly. "If I go to prison, what happens to Emma and Tyler? They adore their grandma Mildred. Would you really want to be responsible for breaking up their family?" There it was. The master stroke. My grandchildren, ages 7 and 5, the lights of my life. They played it perfectly, knowing exactly which heartstrings to pull. I looked at them both, really looked at them, and saw clearly for the first time in 3 years. They weren't family. They were predators who had found the perfect victim in a grieving widow. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Mom," David started. "Get out, both of you. And don't come back until you're ready to discuss how you're going to fix this mess your wife created." They left, but not before Selene turned back with a look that chilled me to the bone. "You're making a terrible mistake, Mildred. Family is all you have left. Drive us away and you'll have nothing." After they left, I sat in my empty kitchen for what felt like hours. The silence was deafening, broken only by the steady tick of the grandfather clock Harold had loved so much. But instead of wallowing, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I spent the next 3 days going through everything, every document, every file, every piece of paper I could find. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The home equity loan was just the beginning. In my bedroom closet, hidden behind winter coats I rarely wore, I found boxes of statements and receipts that Selene had been organizing for me. Credit cards I didn't remember opening, store accounts in my name, even a car loan for a BMW I'd never seen. My hands shook as I added up the numbers. The total was staggering. $780,000 in debt that I never knew existed. But the worst discovery came when I went to look for my mother's jewelry, the pieces I'd planned to give to Emma when she turned 16. The velvet box that should have contained my mother's diamond engagement ring was empty. The pearl necklace Harold had given me for our 20th anniversary was gone. Even my wedding ring from my first marriage, the one I'd kept in memory of David's biological father, had vanished. I called the number on one of the credit card statements, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Mrs. Thompson, yes, I see your account here. You've made several large purchases at Tiffany & Co., Nordstrom, and what appears to be a luxury car dealership. Would you like me to go over the specific transactions?" Each purchase was dated during times when I was away from home. Doctor's appointments Selene had insisted on scheduling. A weekend visit to my sister in Phoenix that Selene had arranged as a surprise. A day trip to see old friends that she'd practically forced me to take. She'd been planning this for years. The phone rang that evening. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw my sister Margaret's name, I picked up. "Mildred, honey, I just got the strangest call from David." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He said you were having some kind of mental episode. That you were accusing Selene of stealing from you, and that we should all be concerned about your memory and decision-making abilities." The room spun around me. They weren't just stealing my money. They were trying to destroy my credibility, making everyone believe I was losing my mind. "Margaret, I need you to listen to me very carefully." I told her everything. The loan, the forged signatures, the hidden debts, the missing jewelry. Margaret listened in horrified silence. "My God, Mildred, what are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw David's car in the driveway. But he wasn't alone. There were 2 other cars with him. My heart sank as I recognized them, my brother Tom and his wife Linda, and my neighbor Carol from down the street. "I have to go, Margaret. They're here." I opened the door to find not just David and Selene, but a small crowd of concerned faces. David had orchestrated an intervention. "Mom?" David said gently, the way you'd speak to a confused child. "We're all here because we love you, and we're worried about you." Carol stepped forward, her expression full of pity. "Mildred, dear, David told us about the confusion with the bank. These things happen as we get older. There's no shame in needing help managing finances." "The confusion?" I looked around at these people, most of whom I'd known for decades. "There's no confusion. Selene forged my signature and stole over $750,000 from me." Tom shook his head sadly. "Mildred, that's a very serious accusation. Are you sure you're not just mixed up about some paperwork?" I could see it in their eyes. David had convinced them all that I was losing my mental faculties, that I was the problem, not Selene. "I have proof," I said firmly. "Documents, statements, bank records." "Mom," David said, his voice dripping with false patience, "you've been under a lot of stress since Dad died. Sometimes grief can affect our memory, our judgment. Maybe it's time to consider letting someone else handle the complicated stuff." Selene stood slightly behind him, her face a picture of concern and sorrow. But when she caught my eye, I saw something else. Satisfaction. She was enjoying this. "We've already spoken to a lovely assisted living facility," she said softly. "Somewhere you could have help with daily tasks, medication management, financial oversight. Somewhere safe." The blood drained from my face. They weren't just trying to steal from me. They were trying to have me declared incompetent so they could take everything. I see what's happening here, I said, my voice calm despite the fury raging inside me. And I want all of you to leave. Now. Mildred, Tom started. Now. One by one they filed out, shaking their heads and whispering among themselves about poor Mildred and how sad it is when someone refuses help. David was the last to leave. He paused at the door, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy I'd raised. It doesn't have to be this way, Mom. Just let us help you. Help me? I stepped closer to him. David, I worked 3 jobs to put you through college. I sacrificed my entire youth raising you alone. And now you're standing here trying to convince people I'm crazy so your wife can steal my life savings. His face hardened again. Selene loves you. We both do. But if you keep making these accusations, if you try to hurt our family, he trailed off, but the threat was clear. After he left, I double-locked the door and pulled all the curtains. For the first time since Harold died, I felt truly alone, but I wasn't defeated. Tomorrow, I was going to fight back. The law office of Brennan and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a sleek downtown building. I'd found Patricia Brennan's name through an online search for attorneys specializing in elder fraud, and her reviews were impressive. What I hadn't expected was how young she looked, probably no older than David. Mrs. Thompson, she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Please, have a seat and tell me what's brought you here. I spread the documents across her mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene. Bank statements, forged loan agreements, credit card bills, receipts for jewelry I'd never seen. Patricia's expression grew increasingly serious as she reviewed each page. This is extensive, she said finally, and very well documented. How long do you believe this has been going on? At least 3 years, maybe longer. My voice was steady now. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by cold determination. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Thompson, what we're looking at here constitutes multiple felonies. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, grand larceny. Your daughter-in-law could face significant prison time. What about my son? He knew about the loan. He's been helping her cover it up. That's conspiracy and accessory after the fact. Also, felonies. The words should have devastated me, but instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't confused. What had been done to me was criminal, and there were consequences for criminals. What are my options? We can file criminal charges immediately. The police will investigate, likely arrest them both. We can also pursue civil remedies to recover your assets. She paused. But I have to ask, are you prepared for the fallout? This will destroy your relationship with your son permanently. Your grandchildren will likely never speak to you again. The question hung in the air between us. I thought about Emma and Tyler, their bright faces, their innocent laughter. I thought about the life I'd built, the family I'd treasured. But then I thought about Selene's cold smile, David's betrayal, the years of manipulation and lies. They already destroyed our relationship, I said quietly. I'm just finally seeing it clearly. Patricia nodded. Then let's discuss strategy. We spent 2 hours going through everything. Patricia explained the legal process, the likely timeline, the possible outcomes. When I left her office, I had a clear plan and, for the first time in weeks, hope. That evening, my phone rang constantly. David, Selene, even some of the people from yesterday's intervention. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, around 9 o'clock, I listened to the messages. David's voice was cold, furious. Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop this nonsense. Selene is beside herself. You're tearing this family apart over money. Selene's message was different, calculating. Mom, I know you're angry, but please think about Emma and Tyler. They don't understand why Grandma won't see them anymore. Do you really want to hurt innocent children over a misunderstanding? The last message made my blood boil. It was from Carol, my neighbor. Mildred, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Selene stopped by today. She was crying so hard, the poor thing. She told me you've been having some paranoid episodes, and she's worried about your safety. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. They were poisoning everyone against me. painting me as a confused, paranoid old woman who was imagining things. But the next morning brought vindication. Patricia called me at 8 a.m. "Mrs. Thompson, the police are very interested in your case. Detective Rodriguez wants to meet with you this afternoon. But there's something else. They ran a preliminary check on your daughter-in-law's financial history. This isn't her first time." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Selene has a record. Identity theft charges in Nevada 5 years ago. The charges were dropped when she made restitution, but there's a pattern here." I sank into my kitchen chair. "David doesn't know, does he?" "I doubt it. She was using her maiden name then. Selene Morrison. Morrison. The same name as the renovation company that had received the stolen money." "It's a family business," Patricia continued. "Her father owns Morrison Home Renovations. This was all planned, Mrs. Thompson. Your son was likely as much a victim as you were, at least initially." That afternoon, I sat across from Detective Rodriguez, a kind-faced man in his 50s who reminded me of Harold. He listened patiently as I told my story, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting specific documents. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be straight with you. This is one of the most systematic cases of elder fraud I've seen. Your daughter-in-law is sophisticated, patient, and very dangerous. We're going to arrest her, but I need you to be prepared for what comes next." "What do you mean?" "She's going to try to manipulate the situation, probably use your grandchildren as leverage. She might even try to claim you're mentally incompetent and that she was acting in your best interest. People like this don't go down quietly." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. Detective Rodriguez nodded. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." "Hello, David." "Mom, thank God. We need to talk. She's very upset. She says you've been telling people terrible lies about her." "They're not lies." "David." "Mom, please. Just come over. Let's sit down like a family and work this out. Selene wants to apologize if she did anything to upset you." I looked at Detective Rodriguez, who nodded encouragingly. "All right, David. I'll come over. Thank you, Mom. I love you." As I hung up, Detective Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Tomorrow morning, we'll have everything we need. Are you ready to finish this?" I thought about the woman who had stolen my life, my money, and my son's loyalty. The woman who had tried to have me declared incompetent. The woman who was probably, at this very moment, planning her next move. I've been ready for 3 years. I just didn't know it yet. I arrived at David's house at exactly 10 a.m., but I wasn't alone. Patricia's black sedan followed behind me, and Detective Rodriguez's unmarked car was already parked down the street. The plan was simple: get Selene to admit what she'd done while wearing a wire, then serve the eviction notice and arrest warrant. My hands trembled slightly as I rang the doorbell. Through the frosted glass, I could see Selene's silhouette approaching. When she opened the door, her face was the picture of relief and remorse. "Mom! Oh, thank goodness you came. I've been so worried about you." She hugged me tightly, and I forced myself not to recoil. The wire taped to my chest felt obvious, conspicuous, but Selene noticed nothing. David appeared in the hallway, his expression cautious but hopeful. "Mom, I'm so glad you're here. We need to clear the air about all this confusion." "Yes," I said carefully, following them into their living room. "I think it's time we were all honest with each other." The room was beautiful. I had to admit, new furniture, expensive artwork, a massive television mounted on the wall, all purchased with my stolen money, I realized with a bitter taste in my mouth. "Mom, I want you to know that whatever Selene did, she did out of love," David began. "Sometimes families make decisions that seem wrong from the outside, but—" "David," I interrupted, "I need to hear this from Selene. I need to understand why she forged my signature to take out a $620,000 loan in my name." Selene's face crumpled with practiced tears. "Mom, I never meant for you to find out like this. I was trying to surprise you. Your house needed so much work, and I knew you'd never agree to spend the money on yourself." "So you decided to spend it for me?" "Yes, exactly." Her eyes lit up with what looked like genuine conviction. "You're getting older, Mom. You needed a safe, updated home. I researched everything. The contractors, the materials, the best investments for your property value." "And the BMW in your driveway? Was that also an investment in my property value?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw calculation flash across her features before the tears returned. That was, David needed reliable transportation, for work, to take care of the kids. It was practical. Using my credit, I said quietly. Our family's credit, she corrected. Mom, you have to understand. When David and I got married, I thought we were all becoming one family. Your resources, our resources. I thought we were sharing everything. David nodded earnestly. That's exactly right, Mom. Selene sees you as her real mother. Everything she did was because she loves you. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, and wondered how I'd failed him so completely that he couldn't see what was right in front of him. Selene, I said, what about my mother's jewelry? The pieces that went missing from my bedroom? Her face went blank for a moment. Jewelry? I don't know what you're talking about. My mother's diamond ring, my pearl necklace, they're gone, Selene. Maybe you misplaced them. With grief, sometimes people forget where they put things. There it was. Even now, even caught red-handed, she was trying to make me question my own sanity. I didn't misplace them. You took them. Mom, David's voice was sharp. You can't just accuse. I can, and I am. I stood up, my heart pounding. Selene, I know about Nevada. I know about your previous identity theft charges. I know about Morrison Home Renovations being your father's company. The room went dead silent. Selene's face had gone paper white, but her eyes were cold as winter. I don't know what you think you know, she said slowly, but you're clearly confused. Am I confused about the $780,000 in total debt you've racked up in my name? Am I confused about the multiple credit cards, the store accounts, the car loans? David's head snapped toward his wife. Selene? What is she talking about? But Selene wasn't looking at David anymore. She was staring at me with undisguised hatred. You stupid old woman, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? What you're going to lose? Selene? David looked shocked. She whirled on him. Oh, shut up, David. Your precious mommy has been digging around where she doesn't belong, and now she's going to destroy everything we've built. The mask was completely off now. This was the real Selene, the one I'd glimpsed in my kitchen days ago. I gave you everything, she continued, advancing on me. A beautiful home, a comfortable life, status in the community. All I asked in return was for you to stay out of my business and let me manage things properly. By stealing from me? By using your resources intelligently. You were just going to sit in that house and waste away, hoarding your money like some pathetic miser. I put it to good use. At that moment, the doorbell rang. We all froze. Are you expecting someone? David asked weakly. I smiled for the first time in days. Yes, I am. Through the window, I could see Patricia approaching the front door, papers in hand. Behind her, Detective Rodriguez was getting out of his car. What did you do? Selene's voice was deadly quiet. What I should have done 3 years ago. I protected myself. The doorbell rang again, followed by a firm knock. Police! Open up! David's face went gray. Mom, what have you done? I looked at my son, this man who had chosen a criminal over his own mother, and felt something inside me break clean in two. I've done what you should have done, David. I've held your wife accountable for her crimes. Selene lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage, but the front door opened before she could reach me. Detective Rodriguez stepped inside, his hand resting casually on his weapon. Selene Morrison Thompson, you're under arrest for identity theft, forgery, and grand larceny. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, Selene turned to me one last time. You'll regret this. You'll lose everything. Your son, your grandchildren, your entire family. Was your precious money worth it? I watched her being led away, then turned to David, who was staring at me like I was a stranger. Mom, he whispered, how could you do this to us? But I was already walking toward the door, where Patricia waited with an eviction notice in her hands. 6 months later, I sat in my favorite coffee shop, the one Harold and I used to visit every Sunday morning after church. The autumn sun streamed through the windows, warming my face as I read the newspaper. It had become my new routine. Coffee, newspaper, peace. Selene had pled guilty to avoid a trial. 18 months in minimum security prison, full restitution, and 5 years probation. Her father's construction company was under investigation for fraud across 3 states. The web had unraveled completely once the authorities started pulling threads. David had lost the house, of course. Without Selene's stolen money to make the payments, foreclosure had been inevitable. He'd moved into a small apartment across town and taken a second job to make ends meet. We hadn't spoken since the day of her arrest. I'd recovered most of my money, though the legal fees had been substantial. Patricia had been worth every penny. More importantly, I'd recovered something I didn't realize I'd lost: my self-respect. "Excuse me, are you Mildred Thompson?" I looked up to see a young woman standing beside my table, holding a small child's hand. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Yes, I am. I'm Jessica Morrison, Selene's sister. This is my daughter, Amy." My stomach tightened. I'd heard there were other family members, but I'd never met any of them. "I know this is awkward," Jessica continued, "but I wanted to thank you." I blinked. "Thank me?" "For stopping her, for having the courage to press charges." Jessica's voice was quiet but firm. "Selene has been stealing from family members for years. Our grandmother, our uncle, even our own parents. Nobody ever stood up to her because she was so good at making herself the victim." Jessica pulled out the chair across from me. "May I?" I nodded, still stunned. "When I heard what happened to you, what she did, I wasn't surprised. But I was relieved that someone finally fought back." She looked down at her daughter, who was coloring quietly in a small book. "Amy's college fund was emptied 2 years ago. Selene convinced my ex-husband that she was investing it for us. We never saw a penny." The weight of it hit me. I hadn't just been Selene's victim. I'd been one of many. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I had no idea. How could you?" She was brilliant at keeping her victims isolated, making each of us think we were the only ones. Jessica reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "You saved other people by stopping her. I hope you know that." After Jessica left, I sat alone with my thoughts for a long time. I'd spent months feeling guilty about destroying my family, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. But hearing Jessica's words put everything into perspective. I hadn't destroyed my family. I'd revealed what it really was. The bells above the coffee shop door chimed, and I looked up to see David walking in. He spotted me immediately, hesitated for a moment, then approached my table. "Mom?" He looked older, worn down by the past months. There were new lines around his eyes, and his clothes hung loose on his frame. For a moment, my heart ached for him. "David." I didn't invite him to sit, but he pulled out the chair anyway. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "I'm well. And you?" "I'm managing." He stared at his hands. "The kids ask about you. Emma, especially. She wants to know why Grandma doesn't come to visit anymore." The mention of my grandchildren hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "And what do you tell her?" "I tell her that adults sometimes have disagreements that are hard to explain." We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, David looked up at me. "I need you to know that I didn't know. About the other debts, the jewelry, any of it. I swear to you." "Mom, I thought it was just the loan." "But you knew about the loan, David. You knew she forged my signature and you defended her." "I know." His voice cracked slightly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I was in love with the life she'd created for us. The house, the status, feeling like we'd finally made it. I didn't want to see the truth. I studied my son's face, this man I'd loved more than my own life, and saw genuine remorse there. But I also saw weakness, the same weakness that had allowed him to choose his wife over his mother. I'm sorry too, David. Sorry that you learned to value things more than people. Sorry that I apparently failed to teach you the difference between love and manipulation." "Mom, please. I've lost everything. My wife, my house. My kids barely see me because I'm working all the time trying to pay off the debts. I can't lose you too." "You didn't lose me, David. You threw me away." The words hung between us, stark and unforgiving. David's eyes filled with tears. "What can I do? How can I make this right?" I looked at this broken man, my only child, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. That would take time, if it came at all, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "You can accept responsibility for your choices," I said finally. All of them. You can stop making excuses and start building a life based on truth instead of illusion. And then we'll see. David nodded slowly. Emma's birthday is next month. She'll be 8. She specifically asked if Grandma Mildred could come to her party. My throat tightened. I'll think about it. After David left, I finished my coffee and walked outside into the crisp autumn air. The trees were brilliant with color, their leaves falling like golden rain onto the sidewalk. It reminded me that endings could be beautiful, too. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret. "How would you feel about having a house guest for Thanksgiving?" I asked when she answered. "Mildred? Of course. I've been hoping you'd come visit. Are you all right?" "I'm better than all right," I said, meaning it for the first time in years. "I'm free." As I walked home, I thought about Emma's birthday party. Maybe I would go. Maybe it was time to start building new relationships. Ones based on honesty and respect, rather than obligation and guilt. The future stretched out before me, uncertain, but full of possibility. At 65, I was finally learning who I was when I wasn't being anyone's victim, and that woman was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.